Hello, everybody. First off, thanks to Naz and Emily for including me today, and thanks for all of you for being here. I'm going to speak about the new paradigm of food manufacturing, and I'll try to make that more interesting than it sounds on the surface. I'm the founder of a company called HungryRoot. HungryRoot is a food manufacturer. We produce vegetable-based convenience foods. We sell them direct to consumer. We sell them through Fresh Direct and Amazon Fresh. And thanks for carrying us. What's really interesting about what we've learned over the past several years about food manufacturing is the entire industry is shifting, and that's what I'm going to speak about today. Quickly on HungryRoot products, if you're not familiar with the brand, they span from 7-minute meals, which are all based around vegetable noodles, to desserts. We have a cookie dough that's made out of chickpeas and sweet potato and almond butter, to a brownie batter that's based off of black beans, to a couscous that's based off of cauliflower. We manufacture these foods on a weekly basis in a production facility in Long Island City, New York, and also in San Mateo, California. What I find to be fascinating about sort of the food category holistically is there has been so much innovation in the past, really 3 years, within food in general, but it's really been centered within 2 of 3 subcategories of food. And the categories can really be defined by consumer use case and how people purchase food. So if you think about the first primary use case within food is, I'm buying this food because I'm hungry and I actually want to consume it right now. That's typically supplied by restaurants. That includes takeout, that includes sort of new age restaurants, things like Maple and Munchery, and restaurant delivery companies like Seamless. But that's really the first segment within food. The second is near-term consumption. So I'm planning out my meals for the next several days or the next week. I need the fresh groceries in order to cook them, and that's supplied by Fresh Grocery. And also the new age sort of companies within that category are really the meal kit companies, so think Blue Apron and Plated. The third category is flexible consumption. I'm buying this food, and I actually don't know when I'm going to eat it, but I just want to have something quick and easy around, whether it's in my cupboard or whether it's in my fridge. That category is supplied by food manufacturers. So think frozen dinners, canned soups, really shelf-stable foods. And what's fascinating about it is that third segment, from a consumer perspective, the term that people use to describe that type of food is convenience food. If you Google convenience food, the value proposition is sort of ubiquitously appealing. It's quick and easy food that requires relatively little work. It's not going to satisfy sort of the 30 to 45 minute, really nice cooking experience, but it's quick and easy food. What's amazing is if you look at the images that come up on a Google search when you put in convenience food, it's all complete crap. It's chemically preserved potato chips. It's these 10 images right here. It's not appealing and it's not aligned with the modern consumer preferences, which really begs the question, why? The reason why is because the food supply chain is incredibly inefficient. And that's a problem that is going to take a very long time to fix. It's really not a problem that technology in of itself can sort of, someone comes up with a great new idea and it's fixed. It's because if you think about how today food manufacturers sell their product, food manufacturers, the largest 5 are General Mills, Kraft Heinz, Nabisco, Conagra Foods, food companies that have been around for 150 years, enormous companies, and deeply entrenched in offline distribution. So they sell through all the supermarkets, even stuff like Costco, Walgreens, Walmart. That's their distribution model. The way that they ship to those locations is they ship to centralized distribution warehouses. So when they manufacture food, it sits a couple days at their production facility. It's then shipped out, where it sits typically as much as 6 days in a distribution warehouse. Then it's shipped to the actual individual stores. Oftentimes there's actually even another layer where it's shipped to a regional warehouse. By the time you buy it, it's been about 14 days. What that means is you can't produce fresh, healthy, preservative-free formats in that supply chain. And so what that means is they produce in frozen formats and they produce in chemically preserved formats, foods that are going to have a 21-day shelf life. So if you buy it, at least 21 days. When you buy it, you at least have 7 days as a consumer. And there's all these other variables at play as well, which is the shorter your shelf life, the worse economics you're going to get from the grocery stores, because there's a higher risk of waste. So the entire model today of distribution and food manufacturing prohibits fresh food. That's incredible. That's really interesting, because if you think about it, if you can solve that problem, you're actually able to innovate on a product level. And so the equivalent of this is if when Bonobos came out and said, hey, we're going to launch a new direct-to-consumer fashion brand. And by the way, by selling it direct-to-consumer and not through traditional distribution, we're actually able to create pants that never existed in the past. That's what's happening in food. So by selling direct-to-consumer in food manufacturing, we're able to actually create convenience foods that are fresh, all natural, preservative-free. We think this is a trend that is going to start to emerge over the next 5 to 10 years. If you go to the food manufacturers today websites, they're all designed for investor relations. So generalmills.com is an investor relations page. That says something about the DNA of how they think about connecting with the customer. They don't. They think about how do we get to the distributor, then how do we get to the grocery store. By selling direct to the consumer, you're able to shorten that 14-day supply chain really down to about 2, and as a result, you're able to actually offer fresh food products in a category that historically has been chemically preserved and frozen. These are the guys today that own the food manufacturing landscape. One of the reasons this hasn't, so in a lot of ways, it begs the question of why is this not the case today? And going back to the sort of 3 subcategories within food, why has there been so much innovation in the first 2 categories, and why has there not been much innovation yet in food manufacturing? A big part of that comes down to the incumbents are enormous companies that are 10 to 20 to $30 billion of sales. Today, online food sales still amount to only about 2 to 3%. 2 to 3% is not painful enough for enormous companies to feel the pain yet and to say, we have to change our model of distribution to sell direct. I think when that happens, it's going to benefit everyone. It's actually going to benefit consumers the most, because all of a sudden you're going to be able to get products that are much fresher, that don't require preservatives, that don't require freezing, and the consumer will win. Another piece of this that just changes sort of how food manufacturers can think about their business with selling direct. And one thing that's important to spend a little bit of time talking about is, what does selling direct to consumer even really mean? 10 years ago, people weren't buying fresh food online. Fresh direct was sort of a strange use case of someone who wanted to buy groceries online, put their credit card down, have it delivered to their store. Really, the shift that's happened has largely been in the meal kit companies, because also if you think about sort of on-demand delivery of food is very different than getting groceries. Groceries are much more, if you're not consuming it right away, you're very focused on the freshness of the food, because it needs to hold for 3 to 4 days before you're going to cook the meal. What's really changed is sort of the meal kit companies, and now it's this really interesting new use case that a lot of people are consuming that fundamentally hasn't existed in the past. What that does change for selling direct to consumer, so think about someone who comes to HungryRoot.com and purchases one of our products. We know exactly if there's 1,000 people who came to our website, how many people clicked on which product, how many people added something to their cart and then decided they weren't interested in buying, how many people did buy something and then how long did it take for them to buy again. Compare that to our product being in Whole Foods, which is kind of the holy grail of how food manufacturers today think about selling. 1,000 people walk down the Whole Foods aisle. As the food manufacturer, you have zero insight on, does someone just walk by your product and not, doesn't even catch their eye? Does it catch their eye and they're intrigued and they look at it and they look at the label and there's something that turns them off? Do they take it to the cash register and then see the price and rethink it? So you really don't understand your customer. And if you don't understand your customer, you can't improve your product. And so what we believe is a really interesting thing that's changed or is changing right now in food manufacturing is we think every food manufacturer is going to sell direct to consumer. Might not be their 100% of their business, but it has to be a pretty decent chunk because that's the way you understand your customer. You understand, should we be selling the nutrition profile of this SKU? You understand, should we be focused on what's the key messaging? Where are people dropping off? Does someone not like it because it's too spicy? And there's really interesting takeaways you can have that can help you develop your food product right now. That these huge food manufacturers, the way they do that currently is focus groups, which is less real time and less impactful. So we're excited about what that's going to do for the customer experience. One other thing that's important here is there's infinite shelf space online. So if you're a food manufacturer, especially, so I've really focused on the big guys, General Mills, Kraft Heinz. If you're a small food manufacturer, this almost is even more impactful. The ability to get shelf space in a grocery store is extremely difficult. And for anyone who's gone to some of these, the Expo West or Expo East, and you walk around, what's a major focus of food manufacturers is how many Whole Foods are we sold in. That's the measurement of success. And a big part of that is it is so damn hard to get Whole Foods to take your product. And when they do take you, they typically are only going to give you, take one product and give you limited shelf space. Online, that's completely different. You have infinite shelf space. And so what that allows you to do is, in HungryRoot's case, we have 30 products. We're in the process of selling into Whole Foods. They're going to take 5 of our products. We know which 5 are best. We know which 5 are actually, I shouldn't say best, we know which 5 are safest, so which have the highest likelihood of people at least being, they don't need to necessarily be completely blown away, but they need to love it. So we essentially take the ones aside that, hey, 60% of customers say, love it, but 10% say, I don't ever want to eat that again. So you can be really smart about product placement and about which ones you put into the store, which comes down to infinite shelf space. So this hopefully has not been the most, I've heard some of these talks, and so far this feels like the most technical so far. I don't want that to be the case. So one thing I think that's really important about food manufacturing today that can be overlooked is the purpose of it. And the huge food manufacturers have an extremely bad name today, sort of, big food and what are their motives. I actually think the longer that I'm in food manufacturing, the more optimistic I am about food manufacturers' intent. I actually think that one of the big challenges for the large food manufacturers is they don't have direct relationships with their customers, so they're so much slower to react to changing preferences. And they spend so much market research trying to figure out market preferences that in the age of direct-to-consumer sales are actually, you actually are pretty obvious. You find out sort of right away. Why we're doing this at HungryRoot is there is absolutely a challenge with vegetables today and how people perceive vegetables. I know the founder of Dig In spoke about sort of the changing trends he sees in vegetables. We think that is a problem that actually is a problem we can fix. And the main thing about vegetables today is people don't eat them. 94% of Americans don't eat vegetables, the daily recommended amount of vegetables. We believe that's because they don't think they're exciting. If you can put them into a format like a cookie dough or like a couscous and make them exciting, we think that means something. So we're excited about our mission. Thank you all for having me today, and appreciate it. Thank you.